This is the third in a series of 9 short videos designed to help you learn to use the rubric for instructional development and effectiveness for teachers of students with visual impairments, otherwise known as the RIDE for TVIs. The previous video discussed in detail the curriculum and instruction skill areas and proficiency levels, which are the rows and columns in the RIDE rubric. This video will give you specific details about using the electronic version of the RIDE or a hard copy printed version. We'll also discuss using the evidence sheet and the RIDE for TVIs observation notes, which you may want to use along with the RIDE to help you gather data during an observation and then code that data to help you complete the RIDE. While watching this video, you may want to have electronic copies of these documents, such as the RIDE, the evidence sheet, and the observation notes page open on another screen. Or you can pause the video and switch windows on your computer to take a look at the various pieces of the RIDE and evidence sheet as we discuss them. First, we're going to talk about the evidence sheet. So the evidence sheet, which you're seeing on your screen now, it's optional, but you do need to have some method of taking notes during the observation. Make it very clear, you are not going to be completing the RIDE while you're doing an observation of a TVI. You will be taking some kind of notes, and we provided this evidence sheet as a tool to go with the RIDE, and you're welcome to use it. It can be done electronically, like on a computer, laptop, or iPad, or if you're kind of old-fashioned and you still like to handwrite notes when you're doing an observation, then you can just do the same thing on a pad with a pen and paper, and you can take your own notes. But it's really important that you do not complete the RIDE during the observation. So if you're going to use the evidence sheet, you've got places here at the top. You can enter your name as the observer, the TVI, the school name, the student name, and of course all this is going to transfer onto the RIDE document and help you match up your evidence sheet with your RIDE document, because if you're like me, you probably are going to be doing several RIDEs over a period of time, maybe with more than one TVI or intern, and so you want to be able to match these up pretty easily. One of the easiest ways when you get ready to start writing down evidence is asking yourself 2 questions. What is the teacher doing or saying, and what is the student doing or saying? And that's really all you need to write down. If you keep these 2 questions in mind, all you're going to be doing is just taking notes, not putting value judgments. For example, you could be writing, the TVI introduced the lesson by saying, today we are going to review the basic commands in JAWS. And then you would write that exactly word for word on the evidence sheet, and you can come back to it later and use it to help you complete the RIDE. But you really want to avoid writing down things such as, the teacher gave a great introduction, because that's a value judgment and it's not going to be useful for you as evidence as something that actually occurred during the lesson that you can reflect on and mention when you're completing the RIDE. Another example could be, the student was given a choice between writing a letter to his mom or writing a letter to one of his classmates. And you could write that as an example of something that actually happened in the lesson. The column on the right is titled Competencies, and when you're finished completing the evidence notes, if you're using this sheet, we would recommend not worrying about that column at the beginning, because you're not going to be familiar enough with the RIDE. So at the beginning, just take your notes and write the time in as you can as you go along. That will help you, especially if you end up doing the RIDE based on a video. I found that was really useful to help me go back and find those and reflect over those parts of the video. But either way, writing down the time helps you better understand the pacing of the lesson when you go back and look at your evidence notes again. So you're not going to complete the competencies as you go, but then after you've taken the evidence notes, a lot of people find it helpful to go back with the RIDE in one hand and the evidence sheet in another, looking at the various competencies in the RIDE, and you can write either the number of the question or the number of the competency area in this column to help you see, okay, this introduction section really matches up with section 1 in the RIDE. Completing the competency area, of course, and even completing this evidence note sheet is optional, but we recommend it as a way to line up your evidence from your observation with the ride. Another tool that a lot of people have found helpful, especially when you're first doing the ride and you're not as comfortable with remembering all the different areas in the ride, is the this observation notes page. And again, it's totally optional, but if you are looking at your evidence notes and everything just seems all mixed up and you're having trouble picking out those items that go with the different segments in the ride, so that you can not only rate each area but then provide strengths and areas for improvement and provide that descriptive feedback, you could look at this ride for observation notes page. Come down here to the first section, utilizing instructional time. That matches up to the first competency area on the ride. And go through your evidence sheet. If you've got it on the computer, you could literally copy and paste from your evidence sheet and put some of the pieces from your evidence sheet that have to do with utilizing instructional time. And of course, you can keep adding to this form. You can do it by hand. You can make multiple copies. Of course, there's 3 bullets here, but there's no reason that you couldn't add more. And this is just a way to organize your evidence in that's more parallel, that's going to fit better with the ride. So instead of having it organized in time order, which is probably how your evidence notes or whatever notes you take are going to be organized, using this observation notes page just helps you regroup with various pieces of evidence that you have so that it matches the various areas of the ride. Okay. And again, if you find another method that helps, some people use highlighting, some people have a legal pad with all their notes on them and just make marks in the margins as they go through to say, this piece of evidence is going to relate to this piece of the ride. Okay, so the next thing that we want to talk about in this video is options for completing the actual ride. And we've provided you 2 ways to complete the ride. If you open up the ride, you'll see it's an Excel document. And we've looked at it in some previous videos, but we haven't really talked about, how does this work? How can I use the features in Excel? You'll see that there's 2 tabs at the bottom of the screen. And the tab that I have open now is called Complete in Excel. And then if I switch to the other tab called Print, I get the same content, it's just laid out a little bit differently. The tab that's labeled Print is only to use if you are going to print it out and complete the ride by hand. So you're going to go to File and Print. And it's already set up so that each section of the ride takes up just 1 page. It prints really nicely. You can, of course, make multiple copies if you need to. All of that is lined up for you, but it's not really well designed for people who want to type into the form. Going back to this Complete in Excel tab, that's the tab you want to use if you're going to complete the ride on your computer and type right into the form. Okay, and we've built in a lot of features that hopefully will make you see that this is a pretty neat and an efficient way to use the technology to help you with completing the ride. So I have some already demonstrated how typing in the strengths and lessons and suggestions for improvement column will expand. So as we keep adding to this column, the more I type, the bigger the form gets. And then when this form prints, of course, will already contain the information that you've typed in it, and the pages and margins will adjust based on where the page breaks need to be, because some areas you will have written more and some areas you will have written less. Of course, typing in the header information, as we've already discussed, is straightforward. You'll note that you cannot type. If I try and type in this box that has the word date in it, for example, I'll get an error message, and the error says the cell that you're trying to change is protected and therefore read only. So the Excel document is kind of locked down to prevent you from accidentally typing something in an area that you might not want to. Let me delete that. When you are going to make a rating from highly effective to ineffective, or 5, somewhere from 5 all the way down to 1, for any question on the ride, you want to just click in the box in that row that applies to the rating you want to give. So if I wanted to give a 5, all I do is click, and you'll see that the box NA is no longer selected, and the box 5 is selected. And you'll also see that it started adding a total for this column at the bottom of this area utilizing instructional time, and it's calculated the average. Now, because everything else in this area has been rated as NA, it's not including a 0 or any total at all for questions 2, 3, and 4 at this point. That's why the average is 5. Now, if I were to rate question number 2 a 4, then it recalculates the average at 4.5, because it's now looking at these 2 questions, including those 2 questions in the calculation. And you'll see that there's a 5 and a 4 here at the bottom. So it's pretty simple. A couple of things to warn you about is you want to, of course, make sure that you've rated every area, and you want to provide comments in the strengths of lessons and suggestions for improvement area. We also want to double check that you haven't accidentally checked more than one box for any question. So if I accidentally checked a 3 and a 2 here, well, one helpful thing is that I get a little red exclamation point, and that there's a little bit of feedback over to the side. Please check only one box per row. The calculations will be incorrect, and the averages and your total for the entire ride will be incorrect if you accidentally checked more than one box per row. So if I accidentally do that, no big deal. Just click on that box again, and it removes the check. Okay. And if I wanted to go back and set the question to NA, I could check the box again, and now since I have nothing selected 1 through 5, the box for NA is set up again. So let's show that process again for section 2. Let's say for question 5, I wanted to rate a 1. Question 6, I want to rate a 2. Question 7, I want to rate a 3. Of course, now all of these questions, since none of them are marked NA, all of these questions are contributing to the total, and the average for the section is now a 2. Of course, I would have completed this form even further by adding strengths of lessons and suggestions for improvement. So, demonstrating clicking these boxes, which is fairly simple. Okay, so now at the bottom of the screen, it has added up the total for all the columns and all the sections. So this person would have scored a total of 80 points, and their average would have been a 2.96. And so by completing this, and you're able to print it out, or you could attach it to an email and send it to a candidate. You want to make sure that you save it with a new name, so that each time you use the file, You save it with a new name, and then you'll have a blank ride template basically to start over with. And that's pretty much all there is to the actual technology behind the ride document. Remember, you have the option to complete it in Excel, and you always have the option to just print out a ride. But I recommend again that you use the correct tab for the method that you want to use to complete the ride. So this video has discussed some of the electronic and hard copy tools provided to assist you with completing the ride. We introduced the evidence sheet and discussed electronic scoring using the computer-based ride tool. The next video in this series will provide you with a step-by-step instructions for completing the ride for TVIs.